Hey, everybody, we're back. This is the cutting room floor. My name is Jason. Smyrna Presbyterian Church once a week does something called the cutting room floor. And what we sit down and do is talk with our pastor or associate pastor and say, hey, Danny, what was on the cutting room floor? So this week, this Lord's Day, we had Danny Myers, our associate pastor, preaching. And I want to bring him in real quick. Danny, how are you? Good to see you, my friend.
I'm doing great, Jason. Glad to be here. Thanks for letting me come back.
There's no reason why we would not let you come back. Last time you were great. You didn't preach any heresy. You didn't bring your Pope hat. So therefore, said we'll welcome you back. As long as you don't bring the Pope hat, you'll get an invite back. So
All right.
there we go.
High
So
standards
Danny,
around here.
hey, we got some high standards, man. So I have to admit, I told Joel this as well. I am fully enjoying this slow drag through the book of Acts because there's so much that you just kind of, when you set it as a goal to read it, like I got to read through the Bible, you just kind of go through and it's kind of blaze over and a lot of stuff just passes right over your head. And taking the time to go through this slowly and we're not in a rush. Like I'm kind of sad that we're getting closer to the end of it. Has been very fruitful for myself. So tell us a little bit about your sermon, if there was anything you didn't get a chance to talk about or something you want to expound more on.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Something you said just kind of sparked a thought. I do think that is a common challenge, whether you grew up in the church or have come to faith. We're not well trained in slowing down and considering the words by which we read. I was even struck with that this morning as we're, Sunday mornings, we're going through the book of Acts, but Sunday evenings, we're actually going through the book of Judges. And it is a very common thing to get information, what you and I might just regularly call a small or insignificant detail that has very extreme significance to it. And so, even this past Lord's Day, that was one of the things that I was trying to draw out in a couple of ways. The one when Paul is talking about his conversion. If you remember correctly, I made mention that this is the second of three, and there's a reason for that. It's not simply just filling up paper or papyrus or a scroll, but is there actually a good biblical reason? And I think the answer is yes. It's not, the first one in Acts 9 is Luke saying what happened to Paul, but here Paul is in the first person talking about this is what took place in my life. And I think sometimes we use the phrase, well, he's sharing his testimony. I think that is true, but we live in a day that is kind of glamorize the testimonials of people by which we try to add in all of these other outside details to kind of make ourselves look better. But the irony is when you look at Paul's testimony, his defense of the gospel, there's only two details that seem to matter: who he is in the flesh and who is the righteous one, that is the Lord Jesus Christ. When he outlines himself, it doesn't look good. He's not talking about himself in any kind of achievement status by which we would go, "Ooh, I really want to be like him."
Right.
In fact, actually, all of what he points to is Christ. And so one of the details that we would probably be tempted to look over is the one that I alluded to when he says it was at noon. And that's not just because he was hungry or, something of that nature. I think he's drawing attention to the fact that you were outside during the day. There is plenty of light, and yet something of far greater substance had shone. And it was a light that shone over all who were in attendance. And I do make mention of that towards the end, that Paul or Saul at that time was not alone. He had other people. And yet what we notice, according to Acts, is that the light that shines has an effect on Paul drastically different than the effect that takes place on the others. And that is, Paul sees the light of the world. He sees the righteous one, as Ananias will say later on in Acts 22. And yet the people going with Paul, all they have is the objective reality that light has shown. And so I think that is incumbent upon us to recognize. It's a little bit of that echo maybe you hear from the book of Hebrews. Today, if you hear my voice, do not harden your hearts. Today, if you see light, do not ignore it. Do not long for darkness. And so I think Paul's defense of the gospel is powerful because he recognizes, I have given my worldly efforts to what I might call my worldly righteousness, and
Mhm.
yet I saw something altogether greater in righteousness, and it undid me, and that is Christ. And so that would be my plea for anyone who would see the sermon that or hear the sermon. It's not about who you are and what you've achieved, because the only thing that we've achieved is condemnation. That's what Isaiah says. Our most righteous acts are what? They are like
Filthy rag.
filthy rags. And so,
I love it. Thank you, Danny. Now, you mentioned that. Do you feel like you mentioned that this is the third this is the second of 3 times that Paul gives his testimony, and there's slight differences in each one of them. Do you think that there's a problem with that? That it's not the same story every time it's told? I kind of know the answer to it, but what do you think about that?
well, no, of course it's not a problem. I mean, so number one, you've got Luke, the author of Acts, who is known in his historical accuracy, trying to give to us orderly accounts. Not only orderly, he's also giving theological ones. But in Acts 9, you're getting a very orderly account. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. But when you're in Acts 21 and Acts 22, 22 is really where you get the account from Paul. Paul is saying, I was there. Let me tell you about what happened to my life. He is not just sharing it for information. He is on trial. And that's what has sparked the defense of the gospel, is that the Jews have put him on trial. They've drawn him up on 2 false charges that he would go against the law. Read his testimony. How could Paul go against the law? And that he has defiled the holy place. Well, keep reading his testimony. How has he defiled the holy place? And so he is defending the gospel by simply saying, look at what I have done in my life. Now look at who I am, what has taken place. And he's going to do something similar again in Acts chapter 26 when he's before Felix the governor. And so you've got a very Jewish audience here, right? You've got the
Yes.
tribune who's there, but he doesn't understand Hebrew or Aramaic as it's probably being communicated. And so you're going to get a slightly different testimonial picture in Acts 26 when he's talking to a Roman, a Greek, that is Felix. And so it's not just multiple accounts to try to squeeze in details, forget details. No, it's emphasizing certain parts of his conversion for the sake of Christ's exaltation.
Excellent. I love it, man. Thank you so much, Danny. I approve of that message. I approve of that so much. So, will you be preaching this Sunday, or who's preaching this coming Sunday?
We will have the highly esteemed Joel Smith preaching.
Gotcha.
So he will take this Lord's Day morning, and I will be preaching on Judges chapter 3 in the evening.
Gotcha. Hey, let's talk about that for a second, because I mentioned in an episode previous, I'm looking forward to going through the book of Judges. Like, it's such an interesting book, and I do think it does speak very appropriately to where we are now in our culture and such like that. Will we be going slower through the book of Judges? I know we did Judges 1, Judges 2 this past Sunday, and will we be slowing down, or is it going to be pretty much chapter each Sunday, each sermon?
No, we'll slow down. I mean, some of it is determined by the text. So this Sunday evening, we'll just be looking at the first 11 verses.
Got it.
And so we won't go, but when you're talking about a narrative passage, and so sometimes you need extra details that are given later on in that passage. And so we won't go as slow as we have gone most likely in the book of Acts, but we're also not just doing a chapter a week. And so I would think, if I remember correctly, I think we'll be on chapter 3 for 2 or 3 weeks, to be honest. And so we'll take a look at each judge for sure. And then there's going to be some other sermons in there as well.
I love it. I love it. Danny, I appreciate your time today. I know you're busy, so I want to thank you very much for stopping by the Cutting Room Floor, which is a product of Smyrna Presbyterian Church, where once a week we sit down with our pastors and just say, hey, what was on the cutting room floor? Danny, it's great to have you. I'm looking forward to catching up with you. Maybe we might throw in a little Cutting Room Floor evening edition, just letting you know that Throwing it out there.
Yeah,
See
that'd be
if
great.
people want that. Maybe we'll do a cutting room floor after dark.
Yeah, there you go.
Nothing could go
Sure.
wrong with that. Nothing could go wrong with that. But maybe we'll do that too. We'll look at some of the, because I think going through the book of Judges has been very fruitful. Maybe we'll get a little recap, if you will, through the book of Judges
Sure.
as well next time. So, hey, Danny, thank you so much. Enjoy your day, work hard, and we'll see you soon, friend.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care, Jason.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. The sermon that we were referencing will be in the description down below. So please make sure you check it out. And until next time, everybody, peace. Take care.